My father was driving us around in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. He was familiar with the streets and everything in Los Angeles, but Golden Gate Park has a way of winding and twisting, and, well, he drove by a herd of buffalo. And he kept on driving and turned this way and turned that way, and after a while we drove by a herd of buffalo. And my mother said to my father, "Will, you're lost." That's the second time we've driven by that same herd of buffalo. And my father said, "It's a different herd." We collect firewood from places where often people are just dumping it out and saying for free. And I pick up a lot of firewood that way. And then we cut a fair amount of wood here on the property. But the wood here that we have here is pretty much what you'd call trash wood. But hey, Scottish ancestry. They may call it trash wood, but I burn it and it gives us heat. Glad for it.
I had InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. That's where I met Clayton. That was fun. I had Gracia Campbell, pastor's daughter, as my guest for the evening at an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship meeting. And he had a friend with him. So the four of us visited. And just by making conversation, I said, if you fellows don't have a good place for church, you ought to come here. Gracia's father, Dr. Harold Campbell, is a good preacher. And as you know from the story Grandpa's told you, he tried it out. And he made it from Harvard, where he was staying at the time, and came to the Baptist church the following Sunday. And kind of took over from then on.
One of the greatest pleasures in traveling around the world is to have your own children with you. Here we were in Venice, and we were enjoying all the strange scenes and sights, and our kids were too. Yeah, and here's little second grader Betsy, and we're riding on what you might call a water taxi. They called it a vaporetto. And there on the vaporetto is an Italian man carrying a huge communist flag. Don't know why, but it was an example of one of those kind of unexpected things that you see when you travel. You know, you see sights and things that you hadn't expected. So here were our children with us in Venice, seeing all kinds of strange things, things that might have been a little bit scary if you didn't have Mother and Dad with you. And things that to us would have seemed kind of strange and scary if we weren't very protective, because we got our kids to look out for. Now, it's really interesting how a parent is much more bold and vigorous and confident when they've got kids depending on them.
We agreed that we would apply to do Peace Corps. We didn't know where it would be. Eventually, through a long process, we did get selected and had the choice, and we were sent to Papua New Guinea as teachers in the local school. Clayton did math, and I did several subjects, English among others. Well, that's the binding force, I think, in our family. When you love God and you feel that you've made your peace and you're ready for heaven, it dispels a lot of fear. Life has been fun, interesting. I think just being grateful for what God has and expressing it has been satisfying.